3, 2, 1, we are live, Lauren. I had to, I live in the heart of LA and don't really have to deal with traffic. Everything's very close to where I live. Very privileged and lucky for that. But I had to drive my dog to the vet this morning, and so I am like so frazzled.
Oh man, what's
road closures
going
and
on? Is there there's inflation everywhere right now. Is there vet inflation? Are vets more expensive
I haven't
than
had a
like 3
dog
years
long
ago?
enough to I know everything else is. I mean, what always shocks me here is it's not even the price of gas because you expect that. It's the price of food is insane. Like you go to other states. I don't know about New York. I don't spend much time in New York City, but like food is expensive. The vet I can pay for, but like, breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 times a day. Crazy.
Yeah.
So
Well, how
anyway,
did you see the block news that came out this week, yesterday, and everything going on there?
block news.
That's my favorite story of the week. So Block, or as you may know it as Square, had this firm called Hindenburg Research, and they do a lot of short selling research. And they looked into Block, which owns Square, the product that you might know as Square for payments, and a couple other payments fintech type plays, including Cash App. And they put out this huge research report on everything that's wrong with this business. They looked at all the companies in the same way that, like, tech companies and tech VC firms pay tech influencers to make stuff up. Cash App actually was paying rappers to sing about Cash App, because it's targeted mostly at like urban and lower income communities. And Cash App has been connected to a bunch of crimes. There's money laundering going on through it. Like, one of the rappers they paid was like in prison now for a bunch of stuff. And it's really like kind of funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it is funny, that hey, this all rolls up to a publicly traded company that is run by Jack Dorsey. So that's been a good one. Look up the Hindenburg research report that came out, and the stock price tanked a little bit because of this.
I
And
thought I thought Jack spent all his days on doing crypto stuff these days.
I
That's
don't. Well, I think
big,
he just
or
takes ice.
was his big thing until recently.
Yeah, I think he takes ice baths and then wants to be the next Steve Jobs. Is what, like, I know two people who like kind of know him because they've like worked with him in the past, and I don't want to say who they are, but you're like, yeah, he's just a bro. He's
The
just
tech, the
taking
tech
ice
Bros
baths.
show is not about name dropping. All tech bros are equal. Love it. So let's go from there straight into tech sales. We're talking money. We're talking. We have been talking the past few weeks about the craziness of what's happened with Silicon Valley Bank, various other banks collapsing and being on the edge, and ultimately all that is about money, right? And so many of the people talking tech and data are just talking, tooling or creating content like you like to make fun of on Twitter, but none of this can happen if somebody's not selling the stuff, right?
Well, it can happen for a little while if nobody's selling the stuff, which is the problem we're in right now. Uh, but yeah, tech sales is great. I started my career in tech sales, actually. That was my first, like, professional job. Was I was cold calling and slinging SMS software. And as owner of a consulting firm, like, I do data stuff, I do tech stuff, I do cloud stuff, right? Like, all day long, but my job's actually sales. Like,
We're all, yeah,
most jobs are actually sales. So I'm
yeah,
excited to talk to Brian
unless you're
here
like
today.
a tenured professor or something, and even then, you're in
I
sales.
think it's still
Exactly.
sales because you got
Yeah,
to sell your academic papers and everything like that. I think
yeah,
everything's actually sales.
yeah, yeah. All right, let's bring in our guest. Pop him in here. All right, welcome to Brian Benedict from Kubit. You're over on the East Coast, not too far from Lauren, right, Brian?
Not too far, right here in Boston. That's
Yeah,
it.
and you've got a little bit of the accent.
A little bit, it comes out. Sometimes I get confused for Canadian, ironically.
Mm.
I always think I have like a Canadian accent, but they're not the people that are typically from the Northeast. So
Yeah, I can hear it there. Yeah, when you say Northeast, love it. So,
And the Northeast.
Northeast, that's it.
so tech sales. I didn't know Lauren has been in tech sales. Did you know that?
I did not know that either. What's the
Yeah.
background there, Lauren? What's the tech sales background? How did you get started there?
My tech sales. So I was at a company. It was like 2013. So I graduated college, had $800. I moved up to New York with no plans or no idea what I wanted to do. I was cooking food in restaurants for money, and then what I would do is like, I'd be working late nights, like afternoons and late nights. As a soul food restaurant cook. That's a different story for a different day. And then in the morning, I would be interviewing for jobs and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and trying to get an office job, right? And the opportunity that came up was in SMS sales. I worked for a company for a little bit. They were acquired by Upland Software. If people know Upland, they're based out of Texas. They buy a lot of these smaller tech companies up. So I was there for about a year.
SMS, I'm thinking like text messages. What do you mean?
Like mobile messaging. So like,
Okay.
this is, back in the day before Twilio had really taken off. Like Twilio was still the infrastructure that was used in a lot of the SMS market. But, if you wanted to make like decision trees and like conditional logic and send text messaging out to folks, that was how you did it. And I was not good at my job at the time. We were a sales team of 3 people. I thought I knew everything, like as a lot of like first year salespeople do. I did close a big deal. I did close, a deal with Dell. I was not able to close a few that were like layups, but for whatever reason, I did close Dell, which was like the biggest logo that the company had. That was a fun time. And what I do today is
you become a tech
sales.
pro, and the rest is history. That was your foray into becoming a tech pro. Love it.
Yeah, I guess.
Brian, what's your story? How did you get into tech sales?
Oh man. So I was I guess failed M&A investment banking analyst working at a boutique investment banking firm, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was working like 8 hours a week, and I had friends that were working in sales that were making like double the money I'm making and working like no hours and having a social life. And I was in my mid-20s, and I was like, all right, I either continue on doing this or maybe I take a stab at something different. And so I got into my first gig was at Forrester Research doing research tech sales, and I was working specifically on startups. And one of my first clients, was actually Salesforce. And I was like, wow, like these companies are really building something really interesting. I don't want to sell research. I want to sell software. This is where the money looks like it really is. And so that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And so now you're at a product analytics company, Kubit. And what's been your kind of trajectory? You've been at various early and mid stage, all different size companies.
Yeah, I would say so. Everything from, running sales teams at, small, mid-sized companies to being an individual contributor at all these different stages. But mostly my background's been in really super early stage companies, helping them with go-to-market and getting set up and just getting that velocity. So it's been fun.
So right now we're in, as we've talked about extensively on the show, we're in a very particular time with, what happened with SVB, that sort of shed the light on various things happening. But in the bigger picture, what's particular about this kind of moment in time when it comes to tech sales? Because maybe, the volatility the past couple of weeks doesn't change too much. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, it sucks. It's terrible right now. I think anyone in like an SMB or mid-market sales function that's working on stuff, right? Outbound is absolutely brutally hard. And I've talked to about 4 or 5 different sales leaders over the last 2 weeks, and everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's like, it's pipeline is dry. Companies are just not taking meetings. It's really a tough time. So really, people are really doubling, tripling down on the companies that they're working on in terms of just putting a lot more effort and emphasis on, strategy and execution, because you just don't know what that backfill looks like. That 3 to 5x backfill of pipeline is just not there. So a lot of companies are just really, heads down, focusing on what's in front of them and really holding on, I guess, to any opportunity.
But is that your sort of, I appreciate you being so frank, but that sort of pessimism, is it worse as of a couple of weeks ago, or is it sort of what we've seen for the past 6 months?
I mean, I think it's what we've seen since probably January. I mean, I don't think it's much better right now. I think we're going to see probably even worse stuff happening kind of in April, just given the fact that, companies are now beyond scrutinizing their own budgets in terms of tightening belts and everything else. So yeah, I don't think the next quarter or so is going to be a fun one. I think hopefully, it turns about, but who knows what else is happening, what else is on the horizon, how many more SVPs are potentially out there, or if that was it. So, sorry to be such a happy guest today.
We're not about happy. We like to complain about a lot of stuff. So
yeah, I think like, like times like these, when things are down, are kind of necessary, right? Like I don't want to get too, waxing philosophical about booms and busts and whatever, but in the last couple of years, like, and this is something I want to ask you about, Brian, like working in tech sales, like what I've seen is the trend of like a lot of companies, like tech companies, like SaaS, infra, get to market quicker with lighter products that sell for less, like lower ACVs, lower ASPs. And what I've seen in the last couple of years, in general, is this like PLG motion exploding, obviously, and just like delaying sales hires at these small companies longer. And, the whole idea of let's start small, mid-sized business, let's start mid-market, and then try and win there. And then we'll try and get enterprise in a year from now if we get another round of funding, that type of stuff.
Yep.
Do you think that's like going away coming out of this? Like, is that something that like is enterprise like coming back for startup sales? Like how do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I can look at this a number of different ways. You want me to give you my selfish salesperson answer? You want me to give you the company answer? Right? I mean, there's so many different.
Yeah, give us a selfish. Yeah.
The selfish salesperson answer is I hate product-led growth. I hate PLG. As a salesperson, it's really hard to make money. It's, everyone wants to play the Slack game, right? Because Slack kind of had this mantra when they got started. Mm-hmm. And I think the Slack CEO came out and said, we'll never hire salespeople. Well, 3 years later, he hired a ton of salespeople because he realized he needed to. But they got pretty far without them. And I think a lot of like founders who typically are technical founders that don't understand sales would like to avoid, putting any salespeople in motion and say, well, we're product people. We're just going to build a great product and people are going to come and they're going to download it and they're going to use it. And it doesn't work that way. I wish it did. But a lot of products, and like you said, Lauren, like they're light in terms of use. They're building an MVP, a minimal viable product. And they think someone's going to be able to go in, use that product as is, and then come out and purchase. It's so hard. It's so hard today, especially even if you are selling to a technical audience, there still needs to be some white glove service. There still needs to be people touching it and helping them out. There's so much failure there. So I think from my lens, when I look at where a salesperson can make a lot of money, it's typically not PLG type companies today, especially startups. It's going to take a while, right? You're like 1 or 2 years of just being like a marketing arm for them and helping them figure out their process versus actually making money. Versus if you have those small tech companies that focus on enterprise sales and they're bigger deals, bigger ticket items, I mean, that's really where you can, flourish faster. But again, that's my selfish point of view on that.
Yeah. And like, I think the same way, right? Like I, as someone who's managed a budget and managed teams and, had to figure out like, what vendors were I going to, engage with and purchase their product. Like I'm a pretty big fan always of buying fewer products, but buying like, the Cadillacs, spend the $150,000 a year instead of putting together like $5 $30,000 a year products or something like that. And that mentality has just been gone the last couple of years. It really has. And like, I personally, and maybe you agree or don't agree with it, but I think it's just a function of the VC funding environment. Not that it's like, anybody's quote unquote fault or whatever, but like when all these VCs get more money, they, put them in the companies faster, get stuff to market, get it to market as fast as possible. And, what that leads to is these like, smaller feature sets of companies. And I don't know, I think it naturally puts the VC dynamic, or at least it has, puts the VC dynamic at odds with like, selling 6-figure, 7-figure deals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the VCs are definitely given the advice on just get it to market and get logos. Don't worry about enterprise features and functions, right? Don't worry about SOC 2 Type 2. You're not there yet. Just get like, that velocity logo on the mid SMBs. But it just really limits your TAM, limits who you can go after. It really, kind of hamstrings the sales team in terms of what they can really do and the money that they can make. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a balance there, but I think a lot of times, you get a lot of that advice from the VCs today.
We had a comment here from Ryan Dolly, who's agreeing largely, saying there are a number of interesting startups that are targeting enterprise in the BI space after like a decade of going small. And I don't know how you make money selling 10K SaaS deals. I don't know either. We've got a lot of that going on, but I don't know. And Miko Miko is still with Count. Ryan's formerly with Count. Miko says, so no networking effect. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Miko, but maybe Lauren or Brian does.
Well, I think with Ryan's comment, like, everyone's, I don't know how you make money selling 10K SaaS deals. Yeah, I don't think you do. I mean, I think you can get from a seed or a pre-seed to a seed and like show some growth and get some money, which, is what the game is or has been. But like, I don't think you have a good exit doing that. Like, I don't think you're building a solid business doing that. Like, the ASPs have to come up, and they've got to come up, double that 10K and more a lot of times. I'm also interested, and this is something that like, I'm really excited that you're on, Brian, because to your Forrester story earlier, you saw like the rise of the cloud, like beforehand, like when you were, selling research as the cloud, as AWS, I guess at the time, as the timeline aligns was taking off. Like, how do you look at like, selling utility models versus selling seats, and, utility models, and for any your usage models.
Yep.
If anyone in the audience doesn't know, right, like, if you buy a product and you pay a platform fee and you pay, for 10 power users and then 20 viewers or something, that's a seat model versus paying for a usage-based product, which a lot of the cloud stuff has, become usage-based in the last couple of years. How does that play out as a salesperson, and how does that inform, like, how do you sell initially versus like, sell in that second year? Maybe it's an account manager, maybe it's the CS team. Like, how does that all work and doesn't work? And how does that whole dynamic come together?
Yeah. I mean, I've sold both ways, and, I've always hated seat-based pricing. Seat-based pricing is chasing everybody, right? Right. Mm-hmm. Think of a renewal, end of the year, you got 20 seats. You have to go back and say, are you using it? Are you using it? Are you using it? Like, you're always worried about, how many people are actually using this product and getting value out of it. Right. I mean, I think there was some statistic about one BI tool that sold to a bank and they had over 5,000 seats, and they did an audit and it was under 70 people were actually using it. What's that going to look like in a year? Right. So, I don't think consumption is perfect either. I think there's definitely holes there, but at least it gives you more of a, pay for what you use type of mentality. Again, from a startup perspective, there's a lot of ways around doing that can effectively allow you to make some money on it, right? You have them prepay for consumption for amounts versus have them just toggle what they actually use and consume. So there's a lot of different nuances there. But, I think what I have seen a lot of companies move based pricing just based on that instance of, the chase down at the end. And there's such good, sophisticated tech now on understanding usage behavior within companies. And a lot of these enterprises have it. Whereas before it's like, well, no one's complaining about this, so let's just renew for, the 5,000 seats. Whereas today there's such good tech out there of, triangulating on how many seats are people are really using. It becomes a lot harder to make that business case.
Yeah. And one of our viewers asks, how do you incentivize salespeople with that usage model? And that's kind of something I want to get into too, because like, like when you sell a seat model, like you know what it's going to be for the year or for a couple of months at least, like upfront.
Yep.
But with a usage model, like even if you're kind of prepaying, like it's that first year, second year, when the money kicks in,
Yep.
and when the usage starts. So how do you align like sales incentives with that?
Logo bonuses based on new logos. Absolutely. It needs to be more there, right? I mean, I think any startup is crazy if they come out and just say, oh, we're just going to, look at revenue as a target. I think it needs to really be a combination of revenue and net new logos, because the net new logos, every new logo, especially in a land expand strategy, should be worth a certain amount of money to a client, to an enterprise or a business. And so to me, it's like, how do you provide both? Say, okay, here's your consumption payment that you're going to get paid on a monthly, quarterly basis, whatever that is. But we're also going to pop a new logo bonus on you for a certain amount of money to make you whole, to make this worth it for you, right? Because if not, then you're right. You're going to be sitting there like waiting for that annuity to cash out, and you're going to wait like a year or two before those consumption numbers get to a point in which you can actually make real money on. So I always feel like, salespeople are coin operated. They love the fact of getting like, bonuses on new logos. I always kind of attach that into my plans if it's a very low consumption based model fee where it's going to take a long time to get some dollars in the salesperson's pocket.
So obviously it's tough times right now. Lots of things changing, but also salespeople are always getting hired. Like, I actually posted the show and I run this LinkedIn group for data and tech enthusiasts, and encourage them to come watch, because I wanted them to hear some positive things about tech sales. And one of them is that people can always get hired. So yeah, I mean, you hired recently, Brian. What are you looking for? Obviously now you're at an early stage, but we'll say early mid-stage startups, someone who has a background in tech or data, maybe has some sales. What like makes somebody stand out that you're like, this is going to make them successful, whether times are good or bad economically?
Yeah, I mean, my honest answer on this, which is probably not the most PC, is I look for people that don't have work-life balances, that are just literally like crazy on wanting to work. And, it's a time right now where you need people to say, I really want to buckle down and just go and go ham. And I want to use the experience as a startup to just grow my own career and grow my own personal brand and just make a lot of money. And the ones that I tend to, lean on are the ones that are like, I'm in a position where I just need to make a ton of money, whether it's financially, whether it's just the economics, whatever it might be going on in their life, because those are the people that will figure it out and find a way. And so I really look at those types of individuals that just have that inner desire to just say, I just need to make a lot of money and I need to be in a place that I have that opportunity. And those are the people I typically love to hire.
That's interesting, because I would have understood, yes, someone who can hustle and grind in sales, period, even not in an early stage. But I would have thought there was some like, I don't know, personality trait or something. Not really.
I mean, there's certain things that I test on and can figure out. But I mean, people that are just, high octane, picking up phone calls quick, their responsiveness is really quick, whether it's on a message or a Slack or a text message, like people that are just like, you can tell they're in it. They're in it to win. They're really involved with wanting to be part of something. I mean, you can even tell like on an interview process, like how quickly they respond to you, how they respond, how they do follow-ups, right? Like just their mannerisms, their personality, that all just it's so different in terms of how they even just prepare for an interview. How much legwork did they do? What are they coming to you on? Because they have to be thinking, hey, any opening right now is getting about 10 or 15 candidates. How do I stand out? And the ones that stand out really do by their energy and by their kind of commitment in terms of what they bring in those conversations. And so,
we have a viewer who's put you in the hot seat, Miko Yak, who says, okay, Brian, what about women then, especially those with kids? Is this all for men then? Which we do know tech sales is, like most of tech, is dominated by men. So what's your response to that? Like, how can you hustle?
I mean, I literally just hired a single mom as a salesperson here at Kubit, and she's an absolute rock star beast. And, I'm not looking for people to like, put their family, second to a sales career. And, there's no way she does that at all. But man, it's like when you find those people that are just that intense and that want to work and find the time to want to do the extra and go the extra mile. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And no, I'm always looking for, diversifying our sales team and bringing in people that have that. And in fact, I feel like, quite honestly, the candidates that I'm most impressed with lately have been women, just given some of the stuff that they're doing on the sales side, because they have such a unique approach, very different than a lot of the men that I have been hiring. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, like I was consulting with this one, I turned over every rock in their business on data. And like, I don't like turning over all the, SDR and AE, like I'll do it. But like usually like it's not as valuable as like looking through product analytics and stuff. Cause usually like if the sales leadership is good, like they'll know. And all I can really do is supplement it with data. But this one SDR team was doing very, very poorly. And, I looked through the stuff and I looked through everything. And, the sales leader, he's asking me like, what do you think I'm doing wrong? Like, just what, between you and I, what do you think I'm doing wrong? I go, well, how many of your like, SDRs are paying their own rent? How many of them are trust fund kids?
Yeah.
And he kind of paused and thought about it. And I go, well, like, do you think they're working that hard? Like they don't need to make. And like, he thought about it, and a couple months later, he, gotten into that hustle mentality of who like he was going to hire going forward, like, and not, just because, someone, someone's nephew or whatever. And he inherited a lot of that, but yeah, totally understand the hustle nature of it, because, it's harder to slack off when there's a quota involved than it is at other jobs, right? Like you can slack off, and there's all kinds of ways you can game a system, but it's a lot harder, definitely.
No, I agree. I totally agree.
We have a comment here, and I can't see the person who wrote it. It says, and first of all, Miko, thank you for putting Brian in the hot seat. And having worked with Brian, I can say that he is one of the people who does hire women with certainty, which again is a problem in tech sales for sure. So, but thank you for the questions. LinkedIn user says, good, honest question and answer, excuse me, about what kind of person is sought for sales. It's funny. The opposite is sought in certain sections of engineering, especially R&D, I guess, where you want someone who's going to clock in at 9 to 5 and be very stead and balanced and maybe focused in a different way, right, for engineering roles. Although for small and mid-stage companies, you have to have that intensity probably no matter what the role is, right?
I mean, I feel like I'm almost looking for people that are unbalanced, to be honest with you. Really, when it comes down to it, it's like you want people that are.
That's the soundbite we have to cut out.
I really am. It's like you have to be kind of tapped in the head to take a job at a startup, knowing that there probably isn't product market fit most of the time. You have to learn how to figure that out. You have to have a bigger engine of saying, you know what? There is something driving you to say, I have this David versus Goliath mentality that I want to like be at a place to take over the world and do something different. And, it goes against conventional wisdom, right? If there's 1,000 sales jobs out there and there's ones at, massive public companies where, every quarter they're, hitting their revenue targets and doing well, it would just say, well, just go there. You're a salesperson. Like that seems like, the easiest route. But there are so many people that don't want that. There are so many people that want that, that kind of like charismatic way to like go in and really be a part of something at a small stage and win against, your traditional elephants in the room. And I think there's just certain people built for that. And a big question I always ask is, well, tell me where else you're interviewing. And when I hear, oh, I'm interviewing at, all these usual cloud warehouse vendors that are huge and us, I say, okay, something's wrong. You don't really want this. You really just are looking at a bunch of different things versus the ones that are like, hey, I'm looking at all Series A startups and, tell me why yours versus others. That's a very different conversation.
I didn't think I wanted to work in startups. Like a lot of people, I thought, I was like, I'm going to tech. I'm going to go work at a big tech company. And I had this moment a couple of years ago where I was one of the big tech companies has come to me and I was like on round 7 or 8 like insane number of interviews at this point now.
Too many rounds, first of all.
I'm not naive like that anymore. Anything more than 3, it's like, no, forget it. But anyway, I had, this call that was like the 7th or 8th call. It was with the hiring manager. You're expecting the offer. And he said this, he was like, his comment to me was, my concern is that you're too ambitious, which I was really mad about. Because first of all, don't say that to a woman, because I don't think you'd say that to a dude. You might, but like it didn't make sense to me. And, I put in, many hours of work at this point. I was like, I should be getting paid for having done so many interviews. And, ended up not getting the job. So I was super bummed. But I think, to his credit, I think maybe he saw that I had that slightly unbalanced factor that makes for the intensity of, startups. And I've found since being in startups since then that they are a good fit for my personality. But it's not easy. It's not the best work-life balance. And I think it works for me because of my work ethic, but it's whether it's sales or any other role, it's not for everybody for sure. So.
Brian, I want to ask you the classic question that a lot of people dance around or have answers for, both as founders and as salespeople. But when hiring for a salesperson, the first salesperson, you've probably gotten hints of product market fit. You want to close deals. Now, are you hiring the vice president? Or are you hiring an individual contributor who can grow into the vice president? Are you hiring someone who's been the VP of sales, but they're totally fine running the whole deal themselves? And maybe in a year they'll hire 2 or 3 more people. How do you play that whole classic debate of do you hire the seasoned manager versus the go-getter individual contributor? And how do you balance all that?
It all factors into the personnel you already have at the company. It's it's got to be situational. What do I mean by that? I've been in places where the founders are so good at selling that you don't need a VP of sales right away. You need actually a solution engineer, because they need to be able to do the technical demo and let that CEO just fly, because they can sell on their own. Now, what you bring in next is typically not a VP of sales, but typically you can bring a high engine head of sales, or someone that can play a both player coach role for a little while as you figure out where in which this goes. But it just depends. It depends on the size of the company, the ASP that you're going after. Is this a mid-market thing where you're going after smaller deals? Is it a bigger deal? I mean, I never feel bringing a VP of sales in before you actually have sellers is a good idea at an early stage, unless you just have a CEO that's just that into the selling side. I don't think that's the best road. I think you need to figure out, how do you move off of founder-led selling to getting a salesperson selling? And then once you have some of that motion between the two, then you want to scale it. Then you bring in a head of VP, something like that. But it really depends on what you have there. I feel a lot of times you do have founders that are not into sales. So they think, let's just get a VP in right away and, move off of this. But I think the longer they spend in sales, figuring out what that problem is, and then moving off of that into an IC, I think it's a better move.
Got it. And you touched on something too, that you and I, in the past when we've spoken about this and we're chatting about this, you brought something up here, which is the solutions engineer, which, I take to mean pre-sales. It could also be post-sales. Small companies, it's sometimes both. How are those people, how can they be better compensated? And that's a loaded question, because in my opinion, a lot of times they're carrying the sale, especially the more technical the product is, but they're not getting compensated on the deal like an account executive would. So how can that be better? Because I know so many sales engineers who are running the whole deal or 90% of the deal themselves, and they feel like they don't get they get the short end of the stick. They feel how can that all be better?
They do. They totally do. I mean, one of the things that I put in place wherever I go is a much more straightforward comp plan. I mean, one of the things about SC is that you have to understand is, SC's job is to get the technical win of the POC. That's their job. So why are they not gold on that? Find me 5 companies that goal you on, hey, I'm going to pay you a bonus based on getting technical POC wins. We do, but I don't know many companies that do that, because that's really the goal of a solution engineer. And I think, someone might make the case of, well, they could get the technical win, but then the salesperson could screw it up. It's like, well, that's not the SE's job. That's not the SE's fault, not the solution engineer's fault if they screwed that up. So I am with you, Lauren. I really do believe the SE should be comped mainly on, if the deal closes, they should get a sweetener, absolutely. But their job is really to get that technical POC, get that win. If they get that technical win, they're doing their job. And there's an issue somewhere else if those deals aren't closing.
And where is that deal not closed? So if the technical POC is a win and the customer says like, yeah, you're the right solution for us. We know this. It worked well. This is cool. We like it. We're ready to get started next month. How does it fail? Does it fail in negotiating price after that? Does it fail in like scope? Like how does that actually? How do you get the tech win, but then lose the deal? Just to like contextualize it a bit.
Oh, it fails so many.
Probably a million ways.
Oh God, I could think of like, how long do we have on this conversation, Mary? No, I mean seriously. I mean, from a reorg, from the incumbent dropping their price, from yes, negotiations can break down. From the person that is your champion leaves the company. There is just so many factors outside of it that are outside of even like a salesperson's fault for it not going through. But again, it's like, this is the SE's job. It's like their time, it's their effort. We've all concluded that this is a deal that we all thought we can win. So we go through that exercise in the hopes that we do. And if you get that technical win, but it doesn't close, yeah, it stinks, but I don't think SEs should be penalized for it, which I think a lot of them are today.
Brian, you had a great LinkedIn post a couple weeks ago about I don't know if it was based off of candidates that you see or just your general experience about sort of you can see a salesperson or a sales candidate and put them into a certain category. Like I think the enterprise person, there was a Chicken Little in there somewhere. There was like the LinkedIn master. So break those down, these caricatures, which obviously are based in some truth.
I think in any scenario in life, especially when you think of selling software, the first impression of how you present your software, people are putting you in a bucket. And I kind of took it the same approach to like, well, what if I was to take all the candidates I was interviewing and put them in buckets, right? And you have these just, characters in terms of like, you can start putting them in buckets. Like the person that just got their comp plan is done and is complaining and wants out of their current situation. The person that, is a big LinkedIn talker, but they've literally got like 1 year experience. They never even sold an enterprise deal, but they're giving advice around enterprise selling. You just see it all.
They're probably doing content creation about how to be a
Oh, exactly. You see all these types. That's kind of why I started even posting on LinkedIn, was to hopefully like bring some sanity to the insanity that's going on there. There's just so much of it, of just people saying the stupidest things. And it's just like, you can't start fights with enough people on LinkedIn about it, and of just seeing the comments and the stuff. The founder that said, I never want to hire people that, that job jump after 1 year from a startup to a startup because they're looking for 20% increases in selling. It's in their base salaries or something. It's like, it's crazy. That's not why people leave jobs, especially at startups. So yeah, there's just so much noise out there, as we all know.
I love sales LinkedIn. Like there's a lot of crazy communities out there in the bigger tech world, right? Like a lot of viewers on this show, I guess, lean towards like cloud tech world and data specifically, and maybe like analytics. We've got I just see in the comments here, we've got a couple of people I know who are in the BI world, a couple in like real-time world, Spark world. I'm going to tell everybody here the funniest, and like for however unhinged you think that like data LinkedIn gets, or Twitter data Twitter or ML Twitter gets, sales LinkedIn and SDR management LinkedIn is by far the best and the most entertaining.
How do you plug into that? I guess you just look for the group.
Oh God.
You got to find anyone talking about, so like, and then just, if people are joining late or if they don't know, like SDR or BDR is like, the entry level or like kind of more junior or first position in sales at a lot of these organizations. And your job, sometimes it's outbound specific, so you're going out and cold calling people, emailing them, prospecting. Sometimes it's inbound specific. Sometimes it's a mix of both. But managing these people who can be a good mix of people, but the profile is usually like early to mid to late 20s, or first sales job. There are so many influencers out there who just have the secret sauce of how to manage this team, and how they compensate them, and how they manage them, and how they do stress relief when their team is stressed because the quarter's ending soon, and we might not hit the quota, but we're going to go for it anyways. And it is the most insane thing ever. And there's people with there's a guy with blue hair who has all this stuff he goes on about, and then everyone's hitting a gong. Everyone's hitting a gong. And it is the funniest thing to plug into. And it's worse.
Like more fun than data LinkedIn, frankly. I could use this with you. Check it out.
It's definitely much more personality than data LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah. It's my favorite guy is this guy. He runs Seamless. I have no affiliation with this, but he runs Seamless.ai. His name's like Brandon Branson. I have no idea who he is.
Yeah.
I think I talked to him like 5 years ago, and he's going out, and he's going out in like the parking lot in front of his office, and he's like, one of my reps, here's the Bentley they have. One of my reps, here's the Mercedes. And he's taking pictures of the car. And I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, this is exactly like he's selling a product to salespeople, right? So he's not a sales guy selling stuff to a CTO. He's selling it to salespeople and sales teams. And it's like the funniest thing. I don't even know what to make of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. It's a lot of the sales SDRs that have like that kind of mantra are selling to other sales leaders. So I think they feel like their content that they're pushing needs to be very sales induced around the stuff that they're doing to hopefully influence other sales leaders. And yeah, it's definitely a certain personality type.
I want to get one last question in here. This is from Harriet. Hi, Harriet. Longtime viewer, all the way back to when we started in January. She wants to know, can someone who is in insurance sales do well in tech sales? I think that's a really valid question because, my argument as someone who hasn't done tech sales is if you can sell insurance, even insurance itself is probably in many ways a tech or software product practically at this stage. And it would be an easy transition if you're really good at that. But what's your take, Brian?
Listen, the best salespeople that I ever worked with as a collective group were Mormons out of Utah that used to go door to door selling what they did.
Selling God.
Exactly. And let me tell you, you want a hard
God
sales
can be a software too, probably.
You want a hard sales job, you do that. And let me tell you, all of them were just phenomenal salespeople. And I don't think it has really anything to do with you have to have a tech background, you have to know all the stuff. I mean, all of that stuff can be learned. So yeah, I would 100% think it doesn't matter if your background's insurance sales, if it's car sales. I mean, if you have an engine and a motor to, get this job done and do it, I mean, you can learn anything. So 100%.
Love it. I've gone the whole almost hour without talking about my experience in car sales because I'm going to talk about that some other time.
Oh, why are you leaving that out?
But I did sell luxury cars for 6 months, and I was really good at it, mostly because I needed to make money. That's the thing. When you got to make money, you can. I thought I was someone who couldn't, sell anything. I thought that wasn't part of my personality, but when you have to do it, you have to do it. And I learned so much. But I'm going to blog about that soon. So I'll save it for that. This has been great. Thanks to everybody who watched. Let me say a quick hello to everybody. I can't see all the names. Ahimu told me that he was the anonymous LinkedIn user with a great question a while back about how some people, for some roles, it's better to have a bit more of a balanced personality. I want to say hello to people here at the top. Josh, always watching. Thank you. Meredith and Val. And for those of you, Wesley, excuse me, I'm losing my voice today, folks. For those of you I didn't have time to say hello to or can't see your names, then we'll get you next time. So let's end with some predictions. Everybody tunes in usually for Lauren's predictions on the impending collapse, doom in the world. But let's say specific to tech data. We're all in sort of the modern data stack. whether it's, sales, companies being acquired or died over the next 48 months, what are both of your predictions? I don't have any smart ones today, so I'll let you guys tell me.
All the companies that don't invest in sales or don't have I'm not as I don't want to say Brian's anti PLG. I'm a bit anti PLG, mostly anti PLG. I think that any companies out there that are not producing revenue through enterprise sales, or even through mid 5-figure sales for your first year, they're all gonna die. They're all gonna cease to exist. And the reason is because they're so overcapitalized right now, and they're doing such a unique, specific thing. Whatever point solution it is, that they're just gonna burn through their cash, and someone can come along and just kind of knock off what they do in a year. Who's to say there won't be another reverse ETL vendor that starts up in a year from now and gets $5 million in funding right off the bat and gets a couple customers, and then starts competing in that space or whatever. There could be,
or Snowflake, or the big enterprises just add all these features, which is also
So anyone who's not selling, at least in the mid 5 figures, and doesn't have that motion there, is not going to be around too much longer. Is my take on what this means in terms of ACVs and such.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think the other thing is too, as I'm surprised when we talked about this earlier, though, the Chat GPT phenomenon is continuing to spread to the VC world, right? There's so many, and now it's entering the sales side. I mean, I think there's some phenomenal products out there that actually on the Chat GPT side, but now I'm getting hit every day with about 5 sales Chat GPT products that are out there, and it's such a fragmented market. I can't wait to see where this one really goes.
And that's what
yeah,
go ahead, Lauren.
I'm interested too, with this AI, there's been a couple products around the last couple of years, which Chorus is one of them, mostly sales to sales and go-to-market teams. There's a couple others out there. ZoomInfo has features like this. They've been kind of doing this AI, NLP based recordings and meeting sessions and things like that. And there's value to that. I'm actually wondering how is GPT into a Brotherson AI going to make a seller's life better, other than shaving off a little bit of time here and there, which I think it can do for a lot of roles. But what's going to be unique about this for a salesperson?
Yeah.
Or maybe it won't. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have lazy reps that don't do their research in the first place, I don't think reps are very good at search in general. And now you're adding another dimension of it. And so are you going to continually get vanilla emails? It's first we had outreach and we have all these sequencing that everyone's getting hit on, whether it be on LinkedIn or email. Now we're just going to get, I think, for a little bit, you're going to have a little bit of a hype cycle, but I do think eventually it's going to come back to, this is a lot of generic stuff, and people are going to start figuring out, I feel like these are automated emails. These aren't even automated personalized emails, just the way today, right, when you're in an outreach sequence where you're going. I think eventually people are going to catch on to this as well, because it's just not going to have the same tone and tenure as just a really personalized message that someone can send you. So I think it's going to actually differentiate the ones that write those personalized stuff, is going to further differentiate to these ones that are just spraying and playing.
The future right now, the immediate future is spam. We're just gonna all get spammed. It was already a problem, and it's so much worse. The good news is, here on the Tech Bro Show, we are not bots, not yet. Maybe next iteration, but you're not getting spam. You're getting real voices, not generated by AI yet. So,
and Victoria asks, wait, real quick. Victoria asks, this is good for sales, do people even read email anymore?
Yeah,
I think open rates are down. I've seen that pretty across the board. I don't know, maybe Brian has an opinion.
I agree. I mean, I think it's just another mode of conversation of just saying that you've touched them, right? Just in case. It's like now I think like phone's going to be the next thing. I think we're going to start getting more. I've seen more of like unbelievably aggressive calling tactics that have happened over the past 6 months than I've ever seen before, with text messaging and double calling and calling from your area code and trying these other, evasive maneuvers. But, I think people are soured on it, especially on email. Like no one's opening those, which is why everyone's gone to LinkedIn. But even that I think is now becoming just oversaturated with spam too. So,
And you can
Yep.
you can spot a mile away the people whose posts are AI generated everywhere, or I can anyway. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And it's I think it's a challenge for, I mean, if you're getting someone to read your email, you're in sales or marketing, we've all got to be more creative in a different way now. I don't know what that looks like. And maybe that, to me, that's the fun part of what's happening is how do you get someone to listen to you even before they potentially buy your product. So yeah, we'll see who stands out in the coming months and succeeds and sells a whole bunch of shit, right? So
And Brian, before we leave, like tell us, give us the plug on Kubit and what you're about and what y'all are doing there. You've been there a few months. Like, yeah, what's your stake in the ground and what are you all doing?
yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. Yeah, product analytics solution. We are built for data and product teams. So we actually live inside a data warehouse. We actually provide you a much easier, faster way to scale your data than traditional product analytic tools. And back to the earlier conversation around, mid-market versus enterprise. I mean, our focus really is at, the bigger companies in the market that really have these types of issues today. So yeah, excited to be on this journey with this team. It's a great team.
And so competitor to what products that we might know?
Yeah, probably the biggest ones that you might know: Amplitude, Mixpanel, Heap, companies along those lines that we're typically replacing today.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, well, you're now an honorary tech bro. We'll get you back on.
Love it. Would love to.
Right. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Any last words, Lauren?
No, but thanks for all the good questions, everyone in the audience. And yeah, we'll be here next week, and hopefully
talking. We don't know what we don't know whom.
We'll figure it out. We'll schedule a last minute one.
Yes. All right. Thanks everybody. Happy Friday.
Take care. Thank you, Brian.
You bet. Have a good Friday.